Hi there, I'm Photo John for PhotographyReview.com. I'm at Picture Line Cameras in Draper, Utah today with the brand new Fujifilm X-Pro1 digital rangefinder, and we're going to do a little hands-on intro to this very cool camera. I'm going to have Nick Gilson, sales guy here, do the demo because he knows about this camera, and also he happens to be a Leica M8 user, and I know a lot of people are going to be interested in what he thinks of this camera compared to the Leica M8. So I'll turn it over to Nick now.
Hi, I'm Nick. As John mentioned, we're here at Picture Line in Draper, Utah, and today we're going to be looking at the new Fuji X-Pro1. As John mentioned, I'm also a Leica user, and so I've been very interested to see the X-Pro1 and see how it kind of compares to my M8, as well as what type of advantages I might have if I were to use a camera like this, and any potential trade-offs that there may be. Let's take a closer look. Now, on paper, the Fuji X-Pro1 compares very closely with many entry-level DSLRs. Canon and Nikon equivalents would probably be like the Nikon D5100 or the Rebel T3i. It has a 16 megapixel APS-C size sensor. It does have interchangeable lens capability. Right now, it's limited to 3 lenses by Fuji. There's an 18mm, a 35mm, and a 60mm. And as with the digital SLRs that it compares against, there's a 1.5 crop factor. So to get the effective focal length, you'll need to multiply those numbers by 1.5. It has the ability to shoot 3 frames per second, full 1080p HD video, and a 3-inch 1 megapixel LCD screen on the back. However, that's where the similarities cease. Now, the biggest thing that sets the Fuji apart from other DSLRs in this range is the type of sensor that's used. Most digital SLR cameras use a Bayer type array on the sensor. Now, what the Bayer sensor does is it essentially gives you a row of pixels that are all red, green, or blue, and they're in a very consistent order. What Fuji did with the X-Pro1 is developed a new type of sensor called an X-Trans sensor. Now, with the X-Trans sensor, it essentially takes that pattern and randomizes it. The benefit to having a randomized pattern of pixels is that you no longer have to worry about an anti-aliasing filter. Moire patterning should be reduced, and because there's no filter, that means that there's going to be extra light hitting the sensor. This is going to help in a number of ways. First, you're going to have, with more light hitting the sensor, better high ISO and low light performance. But without that filter, you're also not going to have an extra piece of glass in front of the sensor, which is potentially going to provide sharper images. We're still waiting for the first test results to come in, but if the sensor meets the expectations that Fuji has laid out for it, it looks to be a very revolutionary design and one that should give them plenty of momentum, maybe to getting back into the DSLR business. The first impression that I had when I first picked up the X-Pro1 was amazement at how lightweight it is. This is an extremely lightweight camera. Compared to the Leica M8 or M9, I would say it's maybe half the weight. This camera compares very much with like the Canon G1X in terms of weight. I would say that it's even similar in weight to the X10, which is a much smaller camera. The control system is very well laid out. It's very straightforward. You have shutter speed control on the top dial here. Aperture is on the lens, just like you would expect it to be. And I love the exposure compensation dial. This is something that I wish that my Leica had. The ability to go in and just change the exposure compensation right here with a quick dial is so much easier than on my M8, where I have to go in and do it via the menu. Now, even though the X-Pro1 looks like an old school manual camera, don't let it fool you. This thing is full of bells and whistles. First and foremost is the autofocus. Old manual style cameras like this, and even advanced ones like the Leica M8, M9, are primarily manual focus. This one gives you a huge advantage being able to autofocus. The other is plenty of on-screen information, and one thing that particularly makes this camera really just a pleasure to use is the hybrid viewfinder. Now, on the front of the camera, you'll notice this little switch here that looks very much like an old 10-second timer that many manual cameras used to incorporate. With the X-Pro1, it's actually a toggle switch that turns the hybrid viewfinder on and off. Now the hybrid viewfinder gives you essentially the same information that you would see on the back LCD screen. And one thing that is notable with that is it opens up the X-Pro1 to the possible future use of zoom lenses. Because you have a live LCD view in the viewfinder, a zoom lens is no longer an impossibility like it is with a fixed manual style rangefinder camera. There's a number of different display options for the LCD, and again, like I said, these will transfer over seamlessly to the hybrid viewfinder. You have the ability to see information about the way that the camera is set, the mode that you're shooting in, shutter and aperture combination, the focus point that's being used. You have a standard display which will just tell you exposure compensation as well as information about the exposure, or a custom one which will give you all of the information. It gives you a live histogram which can be very helpful, and as you notice as I tilt the camera we have a virtual horizon which is extremely useful for landscape photography. Now, I'm sure John will cover more specific details on the X-Pro1 at a later date with his full review. But based on just first impressions, I would have to say I'm very excited about the X-Pro1. It's an extremely lightweight camera that has plenty of features, and I love the fact that it has autofocus. Leica users that are out there will be excited to know that there is an adapter available that will allow you to use M-series mount lenses. So that's a definite plus for someone like me that has a collection of lenses but not necessarily $7,000 to spend on a new M-series body. I'm really looking forward to see the images that come out of this and see if the new sensor lives up to the hype. And if it does, who knows, maybe I'll be a Fuji shooter with Leica lenses. We'll see. Thanks for tuning in for Pictureline and Photography Review. Again, my name's Nick, and we'll see you next time.